Hey kids, welcome back. We are wrapping up our Kids in the Bible series, and today's lesson is entitled Young David. As we travel through the Bible, we can learn and see how God uses ordinary people for His extraordinary plan, which is to give glory to His name. We usually think that God would use just adults, but as we have learned through these videos and our lessons, that God can use kids just like you. And today's lesson, we are going to learn about a young boy whom God has chosen to be the next new king of Israel to lead God's people. The story begins with King Saul. He is the first king of Israel. Although God had chosen Saul to be the king, God noticed that Saul was starting to disobey and not follow God's instruction. Saul was no longer working for God, but rather himself, doing things his way and whichever pleases him. Because King Saul is disobedient towards God, God has other plans. And so God instructed Prophet Samuel to take a bottle of oil and go to Bethlehem and find a man named Jesse, and one of his sons will be the new king. Hey kids, what is a prophet? A prophet is someone that God chooses to lead His people and to obey His instruction. Prophet Samuel has a very close relationship with God, and he makes sure he follows and obeys God's instructions. So when Samuel get to Jesse's house, God told Jesse that one of his sons would be the king. Can you imagine how Jesse would have felt that one of his sons would be the next king? Oh, Jesse would have been so excited. Now Jesse had many sons, and Samuel went to each son, but he did not find whom God was looking for. Samuel asked Jesse if this was all of his sons. Jesse responded that he had one younger son named David, but he is just a shepherd boy who is out tending to a flock of sheep. Samuel went out and saw David. David had bright eyes, tall and good looking, and God told Samuel that David would be the chosen king. God did not choose David because of his good looks or how tall he was, but God saw his heart, which is his heart that pleases God. So Samuel took the oil from the bottle and poured over David's head. The Spirit of the Lord fell on David at that very moment. You see, David was just a young boy who took care of the sheep, but God saw a special quality of David that would later blossom to be a great king. Now there came a time the Israelites were facing a big battle with the Philistines. Many Israelites died during this battle. King Saul had become angrier and more troubled because he rebelled against God. The Spirit of the Lord had left him, and he lost all favor from God. He asked for someone to come and play harp for him. Now David loved to play the harp, and he was chosen to entertain and calm King Saul. David played for Saul and helped him to calm him down. Saul was impressed with David that King Saul asked him to stay and work for him. Now each day during the war, King Saul and the Israelites would line up to prepare to battle the Philistines. Now there was a Philistine named Goliath who was about 9 feet tall and towered over the Israelites. He would laugh at them and mock at them. Each day, he would ask the Israelites to send one man to fight him. He even said that if this man fights me and kills me, then the Philistines would serve the Israelites. There was no man in the Israelites' army brave enough to fight Goliath, even though they knew the Lord was with them. One day, David heard Goliath and his threats to his people. He was angry because Goliath was mocking God. David loved God and could not take Goliath's word against God anymore. So he went to Saul and asked to fight Goliath. He told Saul how God had rescued him from a lion and a bear. He said that God is with him and he did not need any armor. Saul agreed and allowed David to go and fight Goliath. David took only a slingshot and few small stones and put his trust in God. Goliath saw David and laughed at him. David replied, "You come to me with a sword and with a spear and with a javelin, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of armies of Israel. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hand." Goliath walked closer to David, and David took his stones and slingshot with perfect aim and hit Goliath right in the forehead. Goliath fell crashing to the ground. David won the battle for the Israelites and God. What a great story, right? So what are the things that we can learn from this story and from David's quality? Let's look at it one by one. Number one, David was obedient. Even if David saw that how King Saul has shown fear and doubted God in this big battle of situation, David remained faithful and served King Saul and obeyed him. Number two, David was humble. Even though Prophet Samuel anointed David as the next king, and David knew in his heart he would be the next king, he did not brag or boast about this. Instead, he served faithfully the current king, which is King Saul. He served King Saul without questioning God's plan. Number three, David was brave. And even though he faced someone like Goliath as a giant, even way bigger than him, he did not show fear because he put his trust and his confidence in God rather than himself or his skills. Number four, David trusted God over man. Even being so young, David knew that his future, that his life is within God's hands. And so he did not have any reservation in trusting God. David saw how God has faithfully rescued him from the previous enemies like the bears. And he believed in God that God will save him again in every battle that he'll be facing. Here's our memory verse for today. Matthew chapter 19, verse 26. With men, this is impossible, but with God, all things are possible. Boys and girls, we can learn so much great things about David's life, especially when facing difficult battles in your lives. You see, David took on the challenges. He did not work out to build stronger muscles. He did not use weapons to do a special tactic for these battles. He even didn't call 1,000 or 10,000 Israelites to gang up on Goliath. And here's our take home. David simply put his trust and faith in God. He knew that God was with him and that God will win the battle for him. You see, it wasn't just luck that David was able to hit Goliath in the forehead and kill him. In fact, David knew in his heart that it was all God who was in him, and that he gave God the glory for this. So next time you're facing a battle or a big challenge in your life, always remember that you can put your faith and trust in God and that He will win the battles for you. Don't forget to check our website, www.ifcchurch.ca, for activities related to this lesson. Thank you for joining me today, and always remember that you are special and that God loves you very much. Have a blessed day.